There are men who walk into a room and don't need to say a word. The energy shifts, heads turn, women feel uneasy without knowing why. And then there are others who could shout at the top of their lungs and still not spark a single flicker of curiosity. It's not about looks, it's not about money, it's something deeper, older, more masculine, because it's not just faces that wrinkle with age. Desire fades too. The mistake isn't growing old, it's doing so without power, without presence, without direction. Today I'm going to reveal the 6 habits that turn an older man into a magnet for respect and attraction. And this isn't theory, it's real female psychology. It's stoicism applied to desire. And the final habit is one that very few men ever master, but those who do are never ignored again. I'm Celia, psychologist, therapist, and the woman who spent 2 decades hearing the confessions men never get to hear. If you're ready to stop being invisible, stay with me till the end, because this video won't just entertain you, it will transform you. Have you ever been at a gathering where no one even noticed you were there? You were present, you spoke, you smiled, but it was like you were just part of the furniture, as if your energy held no weight. Has it happened to you? It's not that you have no value, it's that you stopped projecting it. Because when a man loses his presence, he loses more than attention, he loses respect. And that brings us to the first point in this video, silence that commands respect. This isn't a poetic phrase, it's a high-level psychological technique. Most men talk to fill the silence, to be liked, to seem interesting. But a man who is truly interesting doesn't need to say a word. His presence alone says enough. Silence, when it comes from inner calm, becomes a force. One women feel, men notice, and the mediocre can't stand. Think about it. When a woman walks into a room and every man perks up, tries to charm her, seeks her gaze or her approval, she feels in control. But when she walks in, and you don't flinch, you don't speak, you don't need her, you don't shift your energy to match hers, that's when something happens, something no seduction manual can teach. Mystery. That moment when you do absolutely nothing, and yet she starts wondering who you are. I once met a 60-year-old man who never raised his voice, never interrupted, but when he spoke, everyone listened. Not because he was loud, because his silence was so powerful that when he finally broke it, he did so with purpose, with conviction, with clarity, and that was more powerful than any speech. A woman doesn't fall in love just with sweet words. She falls for the man who unsettles her, the one who doesn't react like the rest, the one who can be with her and yet not be consumed by her, the man who stays silent while others compete, the one who doesn't need to prove anything because he already knows who he is. That man doesn't need to be handsome. He's already magnetic. Female psychology knows it well. When a man doesn't feel the need to fill the silence, he's projecting emotional mastery, self-control, inner strength. And that is exactly what awakens the deepest desire in a woman, whether she's older or younger. Because in a world full of anxious, noisy, needy men, the one who doesn't need to speak becomes the one everyone wants to hear, and most of all, the one she can't ignore. The man who learns to master silence isn't the one who stays quiet out of fear. He's the one who speaks only when it matters and stays silent when his presence says it all. But that mastery doesn't come from a gesture. It comes from inner structure, from a life in order, because you can't project respect outward if inside you're chaos. And that brings us to the second key point in this video, routine as a sacred ritual. Most older men live on autopilot. They wake up because the alarm rings, work because the bills won't pay themselves, eat whatever's around, fall asleep in front of the TV, and repeat, day after day, as if their life had no direction, no beauty, no power. But a man who wants to be irresistible can't live out of obligation. He has to turn his routine into a sacred act, a daily training system, not just for the body, but for the character. Stoicism put it bluntly. Your life is built in repetition. What you do every day not only shapes your body, it shapes your energy, your aura, your ability to lead your own desire. And that's exactly what a woman senses when she meets an older man who hasn't lost his center. She doesn't know what you eat for breakfast, what time you train, or what you read, but she feels it. She feels the order behind your calm, the fire behind your peace. Because the man who trains in silence, who sharpens his mind and body even when no one is watching, projects a quiet strength that needs no explanation. Do you know the mistake most men make? They wait to feel motivated before doing what they need to do. But motivation is a teenage myth. A high-value man doesn't move because he feels like it. He moves because he's made a decision. He has a schedule, rituals, priorities, not because he's rigid, but because he knows if he doesn't lead himself, he can't lead anything or anyone else. And here's the deeper truth. A woman isn't drawn to a nice body. She's drawn to coherent energy, to a man who doesn't need to announce he's at peace because his routine has already grounded him. The man who gets up before the noise starts, who reads while others scroll, who watches what he eats, what he says, what he thinks, that man begins to shine, not because of what he shows, but because of what he's built in private. Because at the end of the day, what makes you attractive isn't luck, it's your system, your ritual. That structure that holds you up when desire fades, when sadness hits, when exhaustion tries to take over. The man who has rituals has power. The one who improvises loses. And if you're already in the second half of your life, you can no longer afford to live without rituals. Because if your routine isn't making you stronger, it's weakening you. And that, my friend, is more visible than any wrinkle. There's no point in having the perfect routine if you're still revolving around someone else's desire. Many older men get their schedule in order, train their bodies, even find a sense of inner calm. But they're still slaves to a woman's affection, still waiting for her to notice them, touch them, choose them, and that makes them vulnerable. Which brings us to the third point in this video, and this is where things really start to change. Desire without need. This is one of the most powerful and most difficult keys to master, because desire is good. Desire keeps you alive, virile, awake. The problem begins when that desire turns into need, when you start measuring your worth based on whether a woman replies to your messages, returns your affection, or reassures you that she still wants you. At that point, you've already lost, because she can feel it. Women sense need the way wolves sense fear. No matter how attractive you are, if you're emotionally starving, your presence stops being powerful and becomes needy. The strategy you need is brutally simple, but it requires inner strength. Every time you feel the urge to seek a woman's approval, return to yourself. Don't react. Don't chase. Don't explain. Stay centered. Occupy that emotional space like a king who doesn't leave his throne for a compliment. That's not coldness. That's power. That's refusing to outsource your value to someone else's response. Because when a woman sees that you can want her without needing her, it breaks the script she's used to. She can no longer use you as an emotional provider. She can't manipulate you with affection, because you're already whole. Picture two men in the same room. One talks to her, flatters her, asks questions. He's restless, seeking connection. The other simply looks at her, not with anxiety, but with intention. He's not expecting anything. He's just present, grounded, calm. She knows the first man desires her, but also needs her. The second one, she starts desiring without knowing why. Because in his stillness, in his lack of reaction, there's a message only sensitive women know how to read. I like you, but I don't need you to feel worthy. This is the moment when many men finally wake up, because they stop chasing, and once you stop chasing, you start attracting, not from manipulation, from solidity, from that inner place where you know who you are and no longer beg to be chosen. Before we move on to the next habits, subscribe if this video is showing you truths no one else dares to say. Hit like and let me know in the comments which country you're watching from. And if this part hit home, write just one phrase in the comments. I am stoic. We still have 3 powerful lessons ahead, and the last one will be the most revealing. The one that can change not just your desire, but your destiny. When you understand that you can desire without needing, something inside you starts to fall into place. You stop orbiting around a woman and begin to rotate on your own axis. But just when you're gaining direction, the most subtle and dangerous trap appears, because it doesn't come from the outside, it comes from within. We've now reached the fourth point in this video: confidence without arrogance. Many men, once they start reclaiming their energy, cross an invisible line. They stop being submissive, but become overbearing. They stop begging, but start looking down on others. They think becoming cold is the same as becoming strong, and it's not. Because true confidence doesn't need to crush anyone. It doesn't need to humiliate, dominate, or prove superiority. The man who constantly reminds the world of his worth still doesn't fully believe it himself. Psychology puts it simply: when someone has spent years feeling small, rejected, ignored, used, regaining a bit of power often leads to overcompensation. It's a natural mechanism, but a dangerous one, because you go from being invisible to being unbearable. And that shift, instead of making you desirable, makes you grotesque. The woman who once ignored you might now see you as an emotional threat. A man who uses his wounds not to heal, but to punish. Arrogance is just insecurity in disguise. The Stoics knew this. The man who needs constant admiration is asking for something he can't give himself. Real respect isn't born from shouting, it's born from alignment, from calm, from the way you stand, speak, and decide, without needing to justify. Authentic confidence is quiet. It doesn't impose, it radiates. And women recognize it instantly. Think about it. What creates more desire? The man who walks into a room talking about himself, listing his achievements, criticizing everyone around him, or the one who walks in, observes, listens, and when he finally speaks, everyone listens because they know his words have weight. That second man isn't competing. He's already won, not against others, but against himself, because he's moved beyond the need to be seen, and now simply is. If you fall into arrogance, everything you've built will collapse. Because instead of becoming magnetic, you become repelling. Instead of earning respect, you provoke rejection. And for an older man, that's doubly destructive. Because you're past the age of playing the social media alpha male. Your power has to run deeper, be more mature, more irresistible through emotional elegance, not aggression. That's why this point is vital. Keep your confidence high, yes, but keep it clean. Let it come not from resentment, not from revenge, but from integrity. Because the man who truly respects himself doesn't need to put anyone else down. And that, my friend, is the kind of man a woman doesn't just desire, she dares to admire. When a man learns to build real confidence, the kind that doesn't need decoration or noise, he begins to live in a far more stable emotional space. But there's still a bigger challenge ahead, quieter and more dangerous, because you can have presence, direction, strength. But if your emotional state depends on what others do, you've already given your power away. That's why we've reached the fifth point in this video: unshakable presence. Do you know what a woman admires most in an older man? It's not his looks, it's not his experience, it's not even his intelligence. It's his ability to stay grounded when things don't go his way. That unshakable presence that doesn't crack under rejection, coldness, or indifference. That solid, steady energy that doesn't need to prove it's okay, because it is. Because he's trained himself emotionally not to give up his center. Many men fail here, not because they're weak, but because they've been conditioned. After years in relationships where the woman reacted with tears, yelling, or distance, they learned to give in, to lower their voice, to apologize for having feelings, to adapt to whatever she needed. And over time, they lost their inner authority. They stopped being men and became emotional operators for their partners, the ones who soothe, who accommodate, who avoid conflict. But that role doesn't inspire desire. It breeds dependence, and eventually, contempt. A woman might say she wants a sensitive, understanding, flexible man, but deep down, Her desire is triggered by something else. By the man who doesn't flinch in the face of her chaos, who doesn't step into her emotional storm, doesn't react with desperation, doesn't beg her to stay. The man who can look at the disorder and stay centered, who doesn't react right away, who doesn't lose his footing. That's the man she never forgets. Because he's not at anyone's mercy, because his peace is not for sale. If you don't learn this, you'll keep repeating the same cycle. You'll fall in love, get your hopes up, and when she pulls away, you'll fall apart. You'll do what you've done 100 times before. Ask what went wrong, message her, search for answers. And every time you do that, you shrink in her eyes. Because there's nothing less attractive than a man who crumbles over silence. So let me say it clearly. If your emotional state depends on her, she no longer respects you. How do you turn it around? Not with motivational quotes, with discipline, with emotional training, with full days of not reacting to what doesn't deserve your energy, with inner decisions that don't change based on who sees you or who ignores you. Unshakable presence is built through repeated self-control, through the conscious choice not to argue, not to explain, not to justify, but to hold your ground. Because the one who holds himself up becomes a pillar. And the man who is a pillar is never overlooked. This is the mindset that changes everything. I do not get shaken by what I do not respect. If she yells, you observe. If she pulls away, you don't chase. If she tries to manipulate, you don't respond. Not to punish her, to respect yourself. Because the man who allows himself to be shaken allows himself to be owned. And you were not born to be possessed by someone else's emotional state. You were born to lead yourself, and from there, lead your entire life. When you learn to hold your presence without breaking, without giving in to the emotional ups and downs of others, something inside you begins to harden in the best possible way. But there's still a deeper layer, because outer calm means nothing if on the inside you're still a man full of contradictions. And those contradictions, sooner or later, show. That's why we've reached the 6th point in this video, coherence as sexual attraction. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture yourself walking into a man's home. There's order, silence, books with notes in the margins, well-chosen clothes, a subtle but present scent, nothing flashy, but everything is intentional. That man hasn't said a word yet, and still, you already know he respects himself. Why? Because everything around him speaks for him. His discipline, his clarity, his coherence. Now think of another man. He says he wants respect, but tolerates humiliation. He says he's strong, but cries every night over a woman who no longer chooses him. He says he's focused, but his entire life revolves around whether or not she replies to a message. Which one do you think inspires desire? And which one inspires pity? Coherence is not a performance. It's an invisible system that holds up your masculine energy. It's the bridge between what you say and what you do, between what you promise and what you follow through on. And a woman can feel it instantly. She might not know philosophy or emotional strategy, but she knows when a man is aligned with himself, and when she sees it, it shakes her, because it's rare. Because in a world full of men who contradict themselves, meeting one who doesn't break, who doesn't lie, who doesn't pretend, disarms her completely. But incoherence also has a scent, and it repels. The man who says he's done chasing her, but texts her again at 2 a.m, the one who swears he'll respect himself, but begs for attention after one silent night. That man becomes invisible. Worse, he becomes disposable, because she realizes his words were just strategy, and nothing kills a woman's desire faster than a man whose word means nothing. If you stay stuck in that incoherence, your life will keep repeating the same loop. You'll wake up with energy and go to bed with guilt. You'll have moments of clarity, followed by weeks of self-deception. You'll spend the day building, only to destroy it all at night when you go back to what you swore you'd leave behind. And that's not living, that's surviving, but with a slow burnout that eats away at you, because incoherence doesn't just push her away, it pushes you away from yourself, from your center, from your essence. Want to be desired again, respected, chosen? Then become a man whose life reflects his word. A man who says, I'm leaving, and leaves. Who says, I respect you, but I won't betray myself, and means it. Because coherence isn't just moral, it's erotic, it's magnetic. It's the secret language of solid men. Men who seduce without ever needing to promise. If you've made it to the end of this video, you're not just any man. Because this wasn't entertainment. It was a confrontation. And not every man can face the mirror without emotional makeup. You didn't come here looking for comfort. You came to understand that if you don't change your habits, your routine, your energy, you'll keep being ignored. You'll keep begging for respect in places where no one hears you anymore. And that sooner or later either breaks you or wakes you up. Now you have a choice to make. Keep going as you have, hoping something changes on its own. Or take control of your masculine energy, reclaim your direction, and become the kind of man a woman doesn't dare to underestimate. You don't need to be young to be desired. You need coherence, presence, inner strength, and that is something you train. I want you to comment one sentence right now. My presence commands. And let me know which country you're watching from. Because it doesn't matter if you're in the US, Canada, the UK, or Australia, when a man wakes up, it shows. And when he joins this community, he stops being one of the complainers and becomes one of the leaders. I'm Celia, psychologist, therapist, and the woman who spent over 20 years hearing what most women will never tell you. This channel exists for one reason only, to show you the truth no one else will. Because you don't need sugarcoating, you need clarity. And this is your house of wisdom, a place to stop being tamed and start being respected again. Subscribe, be part of this community of men who no longer lie to themselves, and share this video with that friend who's lost his strength, who's stopped seeing himself as a man, and who needs to hear this, even if it makes him uncomfortable. Because maybe, just maybe, that discomfort is the only thing that can save him. And don't go just yet. Watch the videos coming up on your screen. Pick the one that makes you most uncomfortable. Because right there, in what you're avoiding, is exactly what you need to transform.